Well, two or three stories worth talking about. I was waiting for the Rich Rodriguez press conference today because I thought that might be one of the big stories. It wasn't. It was a nothing sandwich. Maybe a few little nuggets in there I'll talk about. Uh, Biggest stories, Pat White, Jaheim White, and Chad Scott. We'll get to all of that in just a minute. Now, I don't know if I'll be back again or not. If you feel like subscribing, do so. Um, I may put in a link for buy me a coffee, buy me a cup of coffee, because I think that might benefit a little bit more than fiddling with YouTube taking their 30% cut. This is WVU Football Going Deep. I'm Forrest Poston. Now, a lot of this you probably already heard. Chad Scott has been hired by Texas to be their running back coach. And whether you like Texas or not, stepping up from running back coach at West Virginia to running back coach at one of the, well, got to admit it, one of the top teams in the country, that is a worthwhile step. Miss him. Of course, we weren't going to see much of him. Probably, I don't know if other coaches will be doing any press conferences or anything, but it would have been interesting to see. I don't think he'd have been around more than this year because, if he had a good season, he was going to get hired someplace else. His chances to step up to a full offensive coordinator or head coach get better being at Texas. Not that he's going to step up at Texas necessarily, but having Texas on your resume is a big time thing. He's going to get noticed. Now, in his press conference, halfway through the press conference before Chad Scott, leaving, even came up, and Rich Rodriguez essentially said, well, don't know him well, think he's a good coach, it's a good move for him, and I've already got a bunch of people calling me to replace him. And that's kind of a normal line from Rodriguez, whether he's talking about coaches or players. Seems he always has to mention that they can be replaced. Not that it's going to be hard to replace them. Sorry to see somebody go. No, it's just they're gone. We'll replace them. Yeah, I don't like it. Now, you already know I'm not fond of Rodriguez, or if you've watched much, you know I'm not fond of Rodriguez. I expect him to win games. I don't expect him to build a program. I don't expect him to, be a teacher. And I think being a teacher is a good thing. Yeah, but I want both. I've said this before. It's not that, I want a coach who wins games and is a top flight human being. Am I implying that I don't think he is? Yes. So Chad Scott's gone. Who will get, don't know. For Jaheim White, does this mean anything as far as him transferring? We don't know. You probably have heard that, Jaheim White did have some type of surgery on his knee, probably minor. Haven't heard any details. The only reason it really got out is because White posted a photo of himself in the hospital on Instagram and then deleted it for, I guess, one thing, his ID bracelet was in the photo and people might have been able to snag some information off of it. But he had something done on the knee. Nobody asked about it in the press conference. The West Virginia media sucks rocks. Uh, yeah, they talk about hard edge, and the West Virginia media, sports media, but media in general, has the hard edge of a fog bank. So, I mean, there's just so dang many questions that they don't ask, big time things they don't look into. And we talk about depth on the football team, but if you're talking about stories written by the West Virginia media, depth is not a factor. You know, it's not a pool you would want to dive into without checking. You're going to hit a rock. Ain't no depth there at all. But I mean, nobody asked, how is he? What's the prognosis? Is he going to miss anything in spring? Maybe it was just a little clean out and he's already back doing things. Maybe he's going to miss all of spring. We don't know. And nobody asked. And of course, I mean, if he's going to miss all of spring, he's probably less likely to leave because other teams may not want to take a chance on him. Now, of course, who they hire as running back coach. Because we've got, about 7 weeks, 8 weeks, maybe, I don't know. But a little time before the spring portal opens. We get spring practice, and then about a week after that, we get the spring portal. So White has some time. Now, he can wait and see who gets hired as running back coach. How does he feel about what's going on already? How will he feel, if he does participate in spring practice? Will it make him want to stay? Will it make him want to leave? We're just going to have to wait and see. Now, I don't necessarily think he's going to follow Scott because, I don't know where he'd be on the depth chart with the Texas running backs. But he might want to go someplace other than West Virginia. And again, it's only a possibility. We don't know what he's thinking, and we don't know a dang thing about his knee. So now there's also another White in the story, and that's Pat White. Of course, he was hired as an assistant quarterback coach and assistant to the head coach. Now, that's not assistant head coach. That's assistant to the head coach. And what he's going to be doing, we don't know that either. I like having Pat White back. He is a class act. And, I mean, one thing Rodriguez did mention that, he likes having a mix of experienced coaches and younger coaches. Now, as far as quarterbacks, we got a bunch of people listed as, being involved with the quarterbacks. I think White might be the elder statesman of the group. He's got more experience than Rhett Rodriguez, but he's working as an assistant. I don't know if that'll be a problem. Now, I think White's a class act, as I said. So I don't think it will necessarily bother him. What his duties are as assistant to the head coach, no idea. How much of it's really player relations, how much of it is advertising, come play for Pat White. Is he going to be primarily recruiting? I think having him should be a big deal in recruiting. How different will it be working for Rich Rodriguez compared to playing for Rich Rodriguez? I don't know. There may be personality conflicts now that weren't an issue then. We'll see how it works out. This whole thing of being able to have an infinite number of coaches, however many you can afford, is going to be a tricky way to play things out. You have to have them. You can't have a lot of people on the same page. Even if they're trying to say the same thing to players, they're going to say it differently. Somewhere you end up with a communication issue if you either have too many coaches or too many coaches who just create a dissonance. And I'm not saying that this is a problem. It's just a possibility. Pat White's back. I consider that great news. Is it better news than does it make up for Chad Scott leaving? I don't know. Now, for the press conference itself, one thing I do want to mention that where I really agree with Rodriguez, he's talking about getting down to the 105 roster limit, which looks to be coming. And he said that he would really like to see things grandfathered in so that we get down to that limit over a period of a few years. Now, he didn't say a few years, just over time. So that you don't have to suddenly dump a bunch of players who otherwise would be able to make the team. Now, having said that, the flip side of that is Rodriguez has this thing about bringing in more players than he needs or can use at certain positions, and then just, well, it used to be switching them to another position. Now it's going to have to be cutting, dumping them, bring them in, ship them out. And I think there is a limit to how much of that you can do before players get fed up. So some of this problem of having to cut players that deserve to be with the team, he's kind of bringing on himself. And I've mentioned that before. About the spring game, well, the spring, showcase. That's what they called it. There is this discussion going around, and I think it may have started with Matt Rule at Nebraska. He's the one who usually gets mentioned. This problem with the spring game, if you have a player who has a breakout game, they might get poached when the portal opens. But first of all, I don't think that is going to happen a lot. Now, it supposedly has happened, but you don't have that many people who have that big a spring game unexpectedly, and something that's suddenly going to make other teams want to come in and snag a player or offer them so much money that you have to up your offer or something like that. And if it does happen, that a team comes in, you should, again, if you have the culture that makes players want to be there, this is not a problem. And if your players don't want to be there, is it the players or is it the culture, the coaches? I don't see this as being a legitimate reason for not having a spring game. Now, I should mention, a lot of people have kind of skipped from Rule and from Rodriguez talking about Rule to saying that this is why Rodriguez is not having a full spring game. Rodriguez has never said that. He talks about this. He said, it's something he hadn't thought of until Rule mentioned it. And okay, now he's thinking about it. But I mean, it's been, what, 2 or 3 weeks ago on Three Guys that Rodriguez said, hey, it's going to be the shortest spring game in history, maybe 15 minutes. And there was nothing then about it being because players might get poached. And he did not, in this press conference, say that was the reason. He has not given a reason. He's choosing to minimize the spring game. Now, he said today they probably would scrimmage some, play some football. Again, is that 15 minutes of football? And is that 15 minutes real time, or is that 1/4 of timed football that might last half an hour or thereabouts? We don't know. I don't think he knows. From what he said, he hasn't really decided just what they're going to do. It doesn't sound like anything the fans are going to be happy about. Now, he said fans want to see the players. Yes, they do. And if he's not going to give the fans a game, I think he needs to say why. And it needs to be a pretty dang friggin' good reason. College football is about the players and the fans. Now, I know we've got NIL and all of this other stuff that's mixed in now, but at its core, college football is about the players and the fans. And the spring game is for the fans. All around the country, the spring game is for the fans. Now, it is at West Virginia also for the Children's Hospital, ever since Don Nehlen. Proceeds from the game go to the Children's Hospital. At least in recent years, it's been no charge to get into the game, but people are asked to donate to the Children's Hospital. So effectively, the ticket price is whatever you are willing to donate that day. I don't know how much they typically raise. But I do have the question, and I wish somebody had asked, if this showcase brings in less money than usual, well, I should say, first of all, is any money raised by this going to go to the Children's Hospital? Because it's tradition, but it is not a rule. So Rodriguez or whoever makes the decision does not have to, give any of the money to the Children's Hospital. But my question, Reggie is causing some issues. I'll deal with that later. My question is, if this spring showcase does not result in as much money as the spring game usually does, is Rodriguez going to make up the difference? Or ask his wealthy backers to make up the difference? I think he should. I think a football coach does have some responsibility to the fans, not just to win games, but, to entertain them, give them, something in what is effectively an off season. And I think since we started this wonderful tradition, I think, any football coach at West Virginia now has a responsibility to the Children's Hospital. We'll see how that plays out. Of course, if it's a spring showcase, spring games usually end up on like ESPN Plus. If it's a spring showcase, I don't know if it will get televised by anybody. I wouldn't. I mean, um, if I were to tune in, it would just to find out what the heck it is going to be. But well, let's see. Are there other notes? Pleased with the weight room work so far. A lot of open competition. Liked what he saw of Markio last year. And most of this press conference, this pre-practice press conference, was just stuff he's said at least 2 or 3 times since he was rehired. He's telling the same stories. He's telling them the same way. The questions are wimpy, imprecise, and no follow-up. When asked, if anybody was standing out, he didn't want to answer. If any of the coaches were standing out, he didn't want to answer because he was afraid he'd overlook somebody. I mean, now the media is going to turn this into a whole bunch of stories. They're going to string it out. They're going to give you 2 quotes and, but there's just not much there. All right. I can't get excited about the program at this point. I will be back if there's a big story, something important happens. Not sure what, if Jaheim White transfers. Or I probably will be back after, the spring showcase, and the spring portal, for the time being, I will try to come in at the key, crossroads when things happen and give you my input, and then just probably end up kind of winding down. I will probably cover the first game, and we'll take things from there. Anyway, for anybody who's still watching, thanks. Appreciate it. I probably will be talking to you later. If you like my thinking, just not in terms of football, I do have a channel called Thoughts and Mutters. Got a lot to talk about there. Or you can just go listen to the stories about stupid things I've done. More than one. All right. So long.